from people who ain't got no reverence for you, and I swear that'll make me a better me. Got no conviction, so why would I listen to people who blind us where that is?
Yo, what is up? Welcome back to the Counterculture Podcast. It's your boy Eli. To my left, I have the greatest co-hosts in the world. Nobody's ever seen co-hosts like them. First, in the pine green quarter zip.
Is that uncertified?
That's not uncertified.
No.
Colby. I got Colby to my left, and dripped out and uncertified.
We got the joggers. We got the hoodie.
Come on, man.
And the undershirt.
And the undershirt is
Not uncertified.
Okay,
Haynes.
we'll pretend it is.
It's Mitch.
It's Mitch.
Music by Mitch.
Whenever this is releasing, our summer collection might be out, which is a pair of blue shorts with a white t-shirt. Promise you do not want to miss this.
Yeah.
Butter.
That's fire.
Butter. Absolute butter. So, with that being said, we're going to get into the topic for today. We're going to watch a video. It's about 7 minutes long. I promise you, it's going to be engaging. You guys are going to want to make sure you watch this. So, back to back, talked about Joe Rogan in the last episode. We're doing it again because he had another great conversation with somebody. I actually haven't seen it. You haven't
I have
seen
not.
it.
No.
So, this is our raw reaction as well.
Yep.
I don't know. Anything else? You've watched it. Anything else you want to preface it with?
Yeah, so more specifically, this is Chris Distefano.
Never heard of him.
Don't really know who he is. I've heard he's a comedian, I think. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast previously, on previous episodes. But he's starting his faith journey into Christianity, and he is starting to read the book Case for Christ. Now, I haven't read the book. I've seen the movie. Have you guys seen the movie?
I think so.
Oh,
It's
maybe
been a
when I
while
was
though.
5.
It's not that old, but it's a good movie. I remember
Maybe when I was 10.
I saw the black and white version when I was.
No.
Yeah, the one that was in 1980.
No. It's a pretty good movie.
Justin Bieber's calling me. Hold on. Justin, you want to do a collab with Mitch? Well let him know. Yeah, we'll have to get on that
He
afterwards.
reached out to you first?
Yeah,
before me?
I'll send you a DM.
He's your manager.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm your manager.
That's amazing.
I'll send you a DM and I'll get you guys connected.
He must
That
have seen
work?
my most recent music video.
Yeah. Who shot that? That like incredible videography.
I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe I should just plug it real quick.
Plug the music video.
Holy Ghost music
Come
video is officially out on YouTube.
It's actually really good. The editing was really good.
Yeah, all the shots are from Eli himself.
It's your boy.
He's got magic hands on the camera. And yeah, I thought it turned out pretty well.
Turned out really good.
Comment down below on that video. Let me know what you thought of it.
All right, should we get into it?
Resume. We are getting into a Joe Rogan episode, talking with Chris Distefano because he's starting to read the book Case for Christ, and he's actually giving Joe Rogan some evidence on why Joe should think Christ raised from the dead and isn't just some historical figure that is lost in translation.
Yeah.
Joe pushes back a little, and it'll give us some conversation on how to address, because these are really, really common objections people will have just in everyday life. So it'll give us some opportunity to speak to that.
Yeah.
Maybe equip you guys on how you can handle these sort of conversations, because I feel like every Christian should be able to.
You should be equipped.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you should be equipped. So
Yeah.
this is how we're going to think of it. And
Good point.
yeah, tune in. Let's go.
Let's run it.
This book, Case for Christ, in history, it's not even an opinion. He's not saying, I want you to believe. He's like, here's the history. Here's why dude, so like, if I said to you, Joe, you believe everything you've heard about Alexander the Great, right? You believe it, he's fought in these battles. What they say, you just believe it's Alexander the Great. I'll read his biography. You'd say, yeah, sure. But then you'd be like, oh, but I don't believe, they made the shit up about Jesus. Okay, Alexander the Great, because what you'll always hear is, well, the Gospels were written 100 plus years after Jesus died. Alexander the Great's first biography was written like 300 years after he died. So that right there is like, well, the historians of Jesus were much closer in time than, say, Alexander the Great. And even furthermore, back then, like the ancient Hebrews, they didn't write anything, so they would memorize the Old Testament and the Scripture, so that you had guys that they would pass down, right? They knew 5,000 pages of book at the side of their head. So yes, the Gospels were 70 years later, but they were based off the accounts of people who were living at that time and up to like 25 years after it. And they say, oh, well, game of telephone. I can tell you something goes around the room, telephone. By the time it gets to me, 10 people, what you just said is irrelevant. It's a totally different thing. I get it. But what they said is because of that ancient thing of, kind of having to pass down these Old Testaments because they couldn't write, it would be like if you're playing a game of telephone, but every person, I check with the person before to make sure the word I'm saying is right. And then I keep going. So then it's going to work because you're constantly checking. So that's what they said happened there. And I was like, okay.
Well, that's a little bit of confirmation bias because the real problem is like who said it originally.
So what?
And who decided what the words were originally?
Okay, that I get.
Pause there quick.
Yeah.
Who decided what those words were originally? It was the eyewitnesses. It was the people that knew Jesus and were the closest to him and
Correct.
saw everything happen.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's so unreliable to think like, who wrote these words?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the corner of a building and I just happened to see this guy go by. And it's like, like I did life with this guy. Like I was his friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I hung out with him every day, all day.
Yeah. For 3+ years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a interesting, and I've heard it before, that statistic of like different historical figures and how we really believe in them, like Alexander the Great and everything that's written about them. But when it comes to Jesus, we don't.
I didn't actually really realize that about
that's a
other
good fact.
historical figures. That's crazy.
Yeah. So not only is most historical figures that we trust existed for one, and then just trust the details about their life, the writings about them from history are few and far between when compared to Jesus. And from the original person to the first writings about them, he said about 100 years for the first gospel to be written. It's more like the closest estimate is more like 30 to 40 years after his death, which is super
quick.
and
Super quick.
when
That's
we're
like
talking about
unheard
history.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to think too, like one of the factors is, I mean, we literally reset time,
Yeah.
right? Like AD, BC, right? Like
Yeah.
in case you guys didn't know what that meant, right?
Yeah.
After death, like we literally reset time based on Jesus's life. So like someone like Jesus I think's a little bit more important than Alexander the Great,
Yeah.
just a little bit. So don't you think like the facts that would have been documented by him would be
Yeah.
that much more preserved in a manner that's accurate? 100%,
Right.
right? How much do you guys know about my life? Probably not that well. I'm an influencer, I guess, so you probably know more than a regular person. But how much do you know about Justin Bieber's life? You know where he was last night, right? Because so my point is like these people, even the people we trust, we believe, all these facts, that's probably more unreliable. It is. I mean, you almost can just say it is than the accounts of Jesus.
Yeah.
Given all those circumstances.
Just the mere fact that it's Jesus makes
Yes.
people want to
Yes.
stray away from.
Yeah, and there's accounts of Jesus. Like you guys got to realize this is not like Christianity made this up. Like there's accounts of Jesus in every religion. Like
yeah.
you know that this isn't like, oh, Christianity made up this guy Jesus. No, like whether it's the Muslims, the prophet Jesus. I mean, this is across the board acknowledged. There was a very large historical figure who came into play 2,000 years ago and changed everything.
Yeah, if you're one of those people that denies that Jesus was even a person that existed, you're stupid.
Okay,
And you're
that's just
ignorant
not-
of a lot.
Yeah.
So that's not
mean,
even up
yeah.
for debate.
The biggest atheists know Jesus was real and existed. That's,
No one's contending that.
no one's
anymore.
contending that. I think in 2024, I think people are smarter than that.
Yeah.
I hope. But yeah, definitely some things that are interesting and, just to take into consideration.
Yeah. The early writings for Jesus and are a lot more reliable because there's a lot more of them than a lot of historical figures, and they're written a lot sooner. Even 1 Corinthians was written like 15 years after the death of Jesus. Is like 60 AD.
Yeah.
So
Well, and like, I'm like wondering when to like, should we just keep going? I don't know. I have a lot more to say like about like Japhesus and all that.
will be more opportunity to get
Okay.
into that.
All right, cool.
I get that, which is true. But just for Jesus, this book was saying the reason why they believe the historical accuracy of it is because his haters and the disciples were both saying the same thing. So you have the Romans saying, yeah, this is what happened, who hated him, and at that point would be like, get this guy out of here. He's basically causing a revolt. That's why we have to kill him. He's like somebody getting, protester today. They were like, fuck this guy. He's out.
Right.
And so they were saying, yeah, what you're saying happened. And then the disciples are saying it like a big thing is the resurrection, right? People say, really? He fucking resurrected from the dead? And you're like, well, everybody agreed, haters, Romans, and the Jewish people, everybody agreed he died. That's 100%. That's why when they stab him and you say water came out, it wasn't water, it was fluid from his lungs because he was dead. And that's what would happen to you or I when we die, is we have this lung fluid that comes out. So that's what they said, oh, that's water. And that's what they made him divinity, but it was like a natural thing. He's dead. Everyone agrees. And you say, well, they buried him in a tomb. And then the next day or 3 days later, the tomb's empty. And people are like, so, that made up. And they say 500 people saw him in the town. Romans and Hebrew, they saw him over the next couple of weeks. 500 independently sourced people, real, like corroborated, 500 people saw him. So you say, okay, so there's that. And then the other conspiracy theory is like, well, the disciples robbed his body. The disciples just robbed his body because they didn't want him. They would hand over crucifixion victims to like the wild dogs. That used to be the way it was. If you got crucified, throw you in a pit, wild dogs will eat you, or leave you on the cross, birds will eat you. That's how we deal with you. So they're like, that's why they were taking his body. And then you see that, well, that's probably not what happened. And the Romans themselves acknowledge there's no body in that tomb that we put in there 3 days ago. The body is not there, and we did it. So in order to save ourselves, we're going to say the apostles robbed it. But in reality, that's just a conspiracy because the apostles would have no reason to rob it.
So the Romans think the apostles robbed the body.
That's a conspiracy.
Why do you say conspiracy?
Well,
you're saying a conspiracy to diminish the story.
No. I meant conspiracy in the sense of that's what people say as a reason why the
Did the Romans say that?
The Romans have said that. The
Yeah.
Romans said that back then, and then I guess
Right.
conspiracy is the wrong word because I'm not like it's one story, one explanation. I'll say explanation of.
But if you looked at it, like, what's the most logical explanation? Is the most logical explanation that a dead guy came back to life, or the most logical explanation that someone took his body? Because that's what the Romans said.
Okay. There are a lot of explanations or possible theories, and theory is a good word for it,
Right.
because any supposed alternative explanation for the resurrection of Jesus goes against the evidence of what we have.
Right.
So it is more of a conspiracy theory as
It
opposed
is,
to
right.
a reasonable explanation for the resurrection.
And didn't they have guards like heavily guarding the tomb?
Yeah.
Or am I wrong about that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they did.
So you guys understand the disciples were like 15.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. No. Guys, the disciples are younger than we are. Like the disciples are like kids. Like 16. I think it's estimated they're like 15 to 18. I don't know, probably in that range.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Maybe some outliers there.
Yeah, obviously there's some outliers. But general consensus, they were teenagers, which is crazy.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that. So yeah, no. Roman guards guarding the tomb, highly unlikely. They were like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and take you over. We probably don't have any weapons. They're not like, they were on the go with Jesus, so this is not like their hometown, is my understanding. Like, they didn't just go back to their crib and grab a blicky. Like, no, bro. Like, what did they do, smack him with a sandal? Bro,
Yeah.
come on. Like, let's be realistic. Let's bring logic into the equation.
Yeah.
Also, tomb, massive stone, like, they just killed the guards and then rolled it away. They're bare. I don't know.
Those are good points.
There's just a lot to be thought through logically that contradicts this conspiracy theory.
I think we've said it before too. Like if it was a faked thing, then why would every single person die for it if they knew it wasn't real? right?
Yeah, that's a huge.
Yeah, I mean, even that in
Yeah.
itself is like,
Yeah.
what?
So I mean, to expound on that, like what he's saying is like, imagine you follow this guy. He claims to be the Messiah, Jesus, Son of God, saying all these things. Okay, you think he's gonna conquer Rome. Okay, that's what they thought his plan was, like overthrow Rome, and he dies. And you're like, good plan, Jesus.
Yeah.
What are you doing? He rises from the grave. Okay, so hypothetical number 1. He stays dead. Okay.
Yeah.
You wouldn't make up a story that he rose from the dead and then go die in defense of that story you made up. This doesn't even make sense. No one would do
Especially
that.
there's no social media. Like, you're not going to get famous for doing
Like
that.
there was no clout.
Yeah.
This was like literally just like, oh, for fun, I'm going to go die. Okay. So the alternative theory, which makes sense, is no, they actually saw Jesus rise from the dead, and they're like, holy, this is real.
Yeah.
Like, no way. Like, I don't care what you say. Like, there's this guy who like gets his eyes healed, and the people are basically saying like, what actually happened? And the guy's like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. Like, I got healed. That's what the disciples are saying. They're like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this happened. And in fact, I'm dying defending this truth. I think all of them died a martyr but one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, explain that. That's
Right.
I mean, that's pretty hard. If one just went bat crazy, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe 2. All of them? Come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's craziness. So,
Right.
yeah, things to take into consideration for sure.
Yeah. There's usually 3 conspiracy theories that people will try to sum up as a better explanation than Jesus actually rising from the dead.
Yeah.
And I wrote them down here just preparing for this episode and I kind of
You
condensed
prepared for this?
just a little bit. Just a little bit. Took out my thinking cap here. But I nailed down these 3 theories. There's the theory that the apostles took the body,
Yeah.
that the Romans took the body, and then there's this hallucination theory that people were hallucinating.
I've heard that. Yeah, over 500 people hallucinated.
Yeah. So
And the hallucinations were so real and so long, like they sat down with him, touched his hands, that they died for it,
Yeah.
for the cause. That's
Right.
crazy, man.
Yeah. And just to be clear about this and really put it just condensed, this is why this is stupid, basically. I wrote down reasons why each of these are just incoherent
Okay,
and
let's hear it.
don't make any sense.
Okay.
So the Romans took the body. That's the first theory.
Okay, I'm going to defend the other side.
Okay.
I'm defending the other side.
So
Hit me with it.
the Romans don't have a motivation to hide the body, for one. They wanted proof of his body dead. And when 500 people claimed to have seen him, they could have just disproved that by showing the body in the tomb. Right? That's something that they would want to have in the tomb so they could disprove people's wild theory.
Frick.
Yeah.
I got nothing. That's one of the arguments I use.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they want to show that Jesus is dead.
because if it was them, they'd be like, "Huh, idiots!
Yeah.
Here's his body." And
Yeah.
the other thing is too, like, you don't think someone tried to like, yeah. I mean, if
Uh-huh.
there was a body, someone's finding the body and exposing the lie.
Yeah. There's a reason they put guards in front of the tomb.
Right.
They have no motivation to take his body.
Right.
So for the apostles taking the body, one, they weren't even expecting a resurrection.
No. And because they were like blinded also to like all of the analogies and the
Yeah,
temple being
it's very-
torn down.
Yep.
It's easy for us to look back and say, duh, you guys are idiots. Like, this is what he was alluding
Yeah.
to.
Yeah,
But
they
they
couldn't
don't-
believe it. Like
Yeah.
Thomas, right?
Yeah, but
Couldn't
like
believe it.
then this says like he would tell a parable, and like
Yeah.
the Bible will say like, you know what I'm talking about, and God shielded them from understanding the meaning. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that was like always the case, but the analogy between the temple and I will tear it down and rebuild in 3 days.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were like,
we
what does
get
this
it.
mean?
But
Yeah.
they're like, what is this guy talking about? It took
Yeah.
how many years to build that thing? He's gonna tear it down and build it
Yeah.
in 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no expectation of a resurrection.
Right.
They had no idea this was supposed to happen. They
Yeah.
had no idea he was supposed to die. Fun fact.
That's true.
They did
were
not
all-
know that.
They were
They
very
thought he was supposed to
surprised.
conquer Rome.
Yeah.
They were like, Jesus, what are you doing? Like, don't let them take you. This is not the plan. And he says,
Right.
get away from me, Satan, for you know not what you do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Speaking
huge.
of the clouded judgment, I think it's just recently learned this, but there was kind of a flip in Jesus' ministry where he went from being clear and proclaiming the gospel, I am the Son of God, to now everything is kind of like parables, analogies,
in
secret.
parables, yes.
Yep. And that was when he was talking about the unforgivable sin, actually.
Oh.
And so when
Which was blasphemy against the Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit, exactly. And so when the Pharisees pointed at Jesus and said that this man is from Satan,
Yeah.
that's when it clicked. And now Jesus blinded all of the Jews, and now he spoke in parables.
Wow.
That was the event that clicked.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Never heard it put that way. That's interesting.
Yeah. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I just kind of read through. I mean, me and you usually share every morning. What have you been reading, bro? I didn't read today. I met with my mentor. I don't usually read when I meet with my mentor, but yesterday I read the proverb of the day.
Okay.
Proverbs 6, I think it was.
I slacked today, but yesterday,
Okay.
Hebrews 7.
Philippians 4.
Hebrews is good.
Hebrews is really good.
What is Hebrews? All right, keep going.
Okay, so for the apostles taking the body, they didn't expect a resurrection.
Yep.
And then what they were kind of talking about in the video is, one motivation and really the only motivation that the apostles would want to take Jesus' body is to make up a story that Jesus rose from the dead.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, still like what? Okay.
Yeah. And so, the apostles, after Jesus died, they were in hiding.
Yeah, they weren't like out. Yeah, they weren't out like partying. Like,
They thought they were going to get just killed too
effed.
and executed as
right,
well.
because they were his followers.
Yeah. So they were in hiding. Two, even if they had the courage to muster up to go to the tomb, they'd have to go right up to the Roman soldiers like you were talking about, take them out and then roll this 2-ton stone away
Right.
from the tomb. And then suppose they do that. And then, like you said, why would they live the rest of their life to go then die?
Yeah,
And be-
because they would break. They'd be like, all right, we stole it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to die. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, someone has a gun to your head and they're like, did you take the cookie? It's like, fine, I did.
Yeah.
Like, no one's going to lie. Like, you're not going to be like, oh, I'm just going to say I didn't so I get shot right now.
Yeah.
So that's just the most freaking hilarious.
Yeah. And even if they did somehow get the tomb and get the body, the Roman soldiers would be like diligently looking and interrogating people and the disciples to find out where his body is. And there's no evidence or recording of that at all.
Right.
Yeah. It's funny too, because I think a lot of us have the picture of the stone being like a round stone that you can just kind of push out of the way.
Right.
But like just thinking about it, it was probably more like a jagged stone that was like pushed up by like
probably
50
was.
people, right?
Yeah, who
like
knows?
who knows what that could have
Who
been like.
knows? But it probably was. It probably wasn't just like you touch it and it just
Like a tire,
glides.
like a tire or
barn
whatever.
door.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
little
exactly.
barn door that we got upstairs.
No
like,
hinges
just
on it.
glides.
There's no
There's no
hinges.
hinges.
And then also with that theory, you still have to deal with the 500 people that saw.
Right.
Over
Yeah,
500
yeah.
people,
Where do
Jesus.
you categorize that?
Yeah.
That's a lot of people, and
Yeah.
that's what I love about it too.
Mhm.
It's like, man, how frustrating would it have been if Jesus showed up to one person, low key.
Yeah.
It's like, come on,
It'd be a little sus.
one person could lie.
Yeah.
500 plus, and it's plus.
Yeah.
Like it's plus. So it's like, okay, think through 500 people. That's a ton of people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's my company. It's not like way more than people who work at my company.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's a ton. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
just think that's a large factor,
It's huge.
and it's hard to what do you do with it, kind of.
Which is why the next theory comes up to try to solve that is this hallucination theory.
get that BS out. Of here.
Yeah.
Come on.
So-
Everyone hallucinated.
Yeah, so I said it's nearly impossible for even two people to have the same hallucination. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
See, there's no way that's still valid. People still try and say that. Like there was an eyewitness account once again that was taken down of like who is it? Thomas that touches the wounds or
Oh, I forget. But that one disciple, yeah.
Yes.
the one
bring this up.
disciple like touches him. Can't touch
Yeah.
a hallucination.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Yeah. So and like it's really hard to have the same hallucination, if not impossible, because it's a projection of your own mind, and like you have
Correct.
a unique mind.
Correct.
You know? So-
and even if
Mhm.
like the 12 disciples had it, sure, create your theory. 500 freaking randos. Some of them Romans. Some of them like.
yeah.
Why would they all? No.
Yeah, and if they somehow did have this huge hallucination, the Romans could have just opened up the tomb and just proved that
Once
story.
again, yeah, and disproved it.
The body's still here.
Yeah.
You're not seeing Jesus.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like extra, like you were.
Which they wanted to do. Like, remember, this was all a mockery. Like, they didn't want him to be king. They didn't want him to be the son of God. They didn't want him to have power. They didn't want him to. I mean, you guys got to remember, like, what they got so upset about was the amount of pull that he had in that society and culture. Like, people are just flocking. Like, 5,000 people are coming to listen to this guy speak. Imagine that in today's era. Like, some guy's just traveling and, like, people are literally just leaving their homes. So they were threatened. So if any sign of, like, yeah, this guy has a ton of power. Oh, he came back from the dead. They would have nipped that right in the bud. Nope, here's his body. Sorry.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely able to disprove that pretty quickly.
Exactly.
Logically. And that's all logic, guys. Most of what we just said is, like, common sense.
Yeah.
It is not
when you try to think through it.
A theological scholar does not take a genius to think that through.
And these are all considered more reasonable explanations than Jesus doing what he for years predicted he was going to do. Yeah. With a proven track record of already doing supernatural miracles.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Like, there's prerequisites, which I also am glad. Like, this is not the first miracle, guys.
Yeah.
Like, right? He raised Lazarus from the dead. And in fact, like, that was an interesting. I just read that recently, and I was telling you about this in a text. Like, I think they wanted to kill Lazarus and Jesus, because that made so much commotion. Because it's like, what? This guy was literally dead. He's now alive. Like, come again?
Right.
So, like, people are like, this guy's legit. Like, he has power. Like, this guy must be the son of God. Yeah. So that's something to think through too. This is not a first. This is not like, there's already eyewitness accounts of the blind being healed, the lame walking, the dead living. So, you know, that's, track record.
There's a proven track record that he's able to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's also worth mentioning that Joseph, Jesus' own brother, didn't believe that he was the Messiah all the way up until his death.
Yeah.
But for some reason, after his death, Jesus appears to him, and he also, along with the disciples, goes on to die for that message that he is God.
Converts are important because no pre-bias,
right?
Like, or
exactly.
Predisposition,
presupposed
bias.
Yeah.
So it's not like he wanted that. He's like, oh, F, are you serious? This is Jesus right in front of me, dude. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like,
yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, let's watch the rest.
Okay.
Sweet.
Just because I'm saying that
you
is
think
that
he came back to life
one time, and I'm not saying I'm crazy about it. I'm just saying, you know what? After reading that book, there was enough things that happened that historical scholars who aren't religious, some are believers, some are not,
right?
Are like, this existed and this happened.
But you're talking about historical scholars from 2,000 years ago. Right. And their knowledge of science and biology and life and the universe itself was extremely limited.
Right.
And so,
last time I'm going to pause. I just want to bring something up that I find so ironic.
What?
Joe Rogan he'll go on talking for hours with other guests on how super advanced and crazy intelligent ancient people were, you know, building the pyramids and everything and doing all these building all these civilizations, and how like they were kind of like superhumans compared to us today. And then when it comes to Jesus, they're dumb, you know, like they can't be trusted,
right?
You know, it's just he's trying to find every excuse possible to.
But scientists use carbon dating. We're really smart.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Right. So it's just something to point out. He's trying to find any excuse he can to not go with what the text says.
Yeah. Did you know they found a like 200 million old rock with like a hammer in it, like a New Age hammer?
Really?
Yeah.
Legit.
Fun fact, bro. Makes sense.
That makes
right?
sense.
Timelines correlate.
The amoebas were very crafty.
Whoa. Freaking idiots.
their entire fundamentals, like everything they believed in, was based on mythology. Everything was based on gods and demons and.
Okay, so then what about this? All right, fine. What if the Romans? Okay, they made it up, right? I'm sorry. I mean, the Romans are correct. The disciples took the body, who everyone agreed was dead. What about the 500 people that saw him in the town over the next 6 weeks?
Did you talk to those people?
No.
So if this person was this significant religious guru figure like Jesus was, right? And he really does have this amazing view of how humanity can live in harmony. And he really does talk to people about this. And he really does preach forgiveness. And he really does to treat everybody like they're the same. Paupers and hookers and everyone. Everyone's just God's children, loved. When that guy's gone, you're going to miss him, man. You're going to miss him bad. And if you really do have a fundamental view of reality that's based entirely on myth, and you have connected this guy to the Son of Christ, or the Son of God, rather, this figure that is brought here to save us, and the Romans took him from us and killed him, and now he died for our sins, and the whole thing.
Right.
If you have that in your head, and then someone says, "I saw him," I saw him too.
Right.
Like, people see the Virgin Mary in a fucking grilled cheese sandwich. People see things.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean those things aren't there.
Right.
It doesn't mean that isn't a vision, but it also does mean that people see things that aren't. And there's a lot of people that are not that bright.
Yeah.
They're not smart, and they're easily led, and they're easily manipulated. But it also doesn't mean that Jesus wasn't real.
Right.
Like all those things. But it's just the likelihood of someone coming back to life is very low.
Right.
The likelihood of someone taking his body is very high.
Look at this.
So funny, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing, we talked about this on another episode, but when it comes to faking the story, like a lot of people would be like, well, it was just faked. You got to realize, the first people to give witness to this were women. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Understand cultural context. Women's votes, women weren't even people. Women were not considered equal. Women, in society, I don't even know if they got votes on stuff in court. I don't think their opinion was upheld.
Yeah.
So we're talking, if someone was going to go make up a story, right? It's in today's age, someone's blind. You're not going to pick them to be the eyewitness of your made up story.
Yep.
Comments make sense, right? Because that would make zero sense. So that's one of the largest points towards the resurrection being real is if we wanted to make this up, we wouldn't have made it up like we did.
Mm-hmm.
That would make no sense. But two women, was it Martha and Mary or?
Yep. Martha and Mary.
Martha and Mary were the ones to see and be the ones to see the tomb, and the angel spoke to him. He's not here. So that's wild.
Mm-hmm.
In the context, that's crazy. That's absurd.
Yeah. It's a good addition to the whole idea of that the disciples made up this story.
Yeah, they weren't even the first one. Yeah.
They wouldn't have written it like that.
No, they would have said themselves.
Right.
They were the ones who found it because they knew that they would be the ones who were credible.
Yeah.
So they'd be like, "Hey, we can't say the women found him. That's not gonna work." It's they just told it how it was.
Yeah.
Two women found the tomb empty. So yeah, man, there's a lot to say, and at the end of the day, I do want to acknowledge it takes faith to believe this. Because guess what?
Nobody
I wasn't
saw it.
there.
Yeah.
No one alive right now was there.
Yeah.
And so there is an aspect of this that takes faith, but the counter to that is there's another side, which is atheism and not believing in God, and that also takes faith.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's where are you going to place your faith? You're going to place your faith in something that gives hope, purpose, and, in my opinion, is the most factually backed argument?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going to put your faith in scientists who can't prove anything, so they claim that everything happened 400 million years ago? It's a cop-out.
Yeah.
In case you guys didn't understand why they do that, that's a cop-out. So that they can just say, and anything can happen in 400 million years. Okay. So you just make it up, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's going to take faith, but you got to do the research. You got to figure out, what do I believe? And I think that this is a good start. There's a lot more. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is Josephus or Josephus?
Josephus.
Josephus.
Yep.
Josephus was essentially back in the day. I could have this a little bit wrong, but like he said, people weren't writing, it wasn't like today where it's oh, I just type up an essay, I save it in my Google Drive. It was people had to remember things. And so there were people dedicated in society to be very, very articulate from a very young age, right? whether it was a math problem, like whatever it was, they had to be extremely accurate and articulate because they were going to be the ones who were passing down information to the next people. Like this was a thing. Like this happened because they wanted a way to track history. And so Josephus was one of those, and he was a non-Christian,
Jewish.
right? Yeah. He was not, a disciple. He was not somebody in the inner circle. He was somebody that was watching from afar, a historian documenting these things, and he documented the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he's not part of the Bible.
Not a part of the Bible. Like totally like extra biblical, and like this exists. Like you can find his writing. Like so things like that too. He had no incentive. Like this was not part of what the canon decided to be, Holy Spirit, and so there's things like that too that give, more credibility to Jesus' resurrection. That's like factual, historical evidence. That's not just like, well, I believe it, faith, So
Yeah, and faith is like, we have an evidence-based faith.
100%.
We don't have a blind
not
faith.
a blind faith. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Christians view it like that. Like when they don't have an explanation, oh, that's why there's faith. No, that just means you don't know things.
Yeah.
That means you haven't done the research.
You're a little ignorant. That's okay. We'll
God,
get you there.
Yeah. God has orchestrated history and the documentation of the most important event in human history, so in such a way where we have sufficient evidence.
It's more than sufficient.
More than sufficient evidence.
For sure.
But it's just the right amount where it does take a sense of like letting go, I think. Like at some point you have to stop
Looking for
You're not going to have all the
excuses.
answers.
right.
Yeah, you have to stop looking for objections.
And why? I mean, like
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, so imagine this is today. Imagine this happens today. What faith does it take when Jesus has 500 million views on TikTok because he just died and came back to life?
Yeah.
Congratulations. You believe. You saw it. It was on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of this was it happened in a time period where, it was going to take faith. And I do think God gave us just enough evidence to where it's like, I don't want to say just enough, but like he gave us enough evidence to where it's like, man, we can come to a pretty strong conclusion of what happened.
Yeah.
And like based on other historical people, places, and the records we have of those, we know like this is legitimate. But then also there's no picture, there's no video. Because if there was, it takes no faith. And that was not the point of this.
Yeah.
Right? That's not
Because Jesus tells the apostle that wants to feel him, feel the nail marks in his hands and touch him physically before he trusted it was Jesus. He says, you have seen me, you felt me, and you're blessed. And that's good, but blessed are those who not seen and have believed. Yes.
Love that passage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super powerful.
Because those are the people who will inherit eternal life, and that's who it's all for. That's why the road to heaven is narrow.
Right.
And the road to destruction is broad, because it takes a believing in what you don't see.
Yeah.
And
like, guys, there's so much more we could go into.
oh yeah. Yeah.
The alignment of the planets and the stars and how we are on a globe perfectly oscillating to where we don't die and burn up or freeze. The fact that our bodies develop just enough in the 9 months in our mother's wounds to where we're able to live off breast milk and guys, come on. Evolution. No, not a single thing in the entire world has that no chaos, no bang explosion has ever caused order, right? You've seen the aftermath of an atomic bomb. Yeah, it's not exactly neat. Like, these theories don't make sense. Like, please use your brain. Bill Nye the Science Guy is an idiot. Right? He might know how, friggin' atoms work more than I do, but common sense might be lacking. Like, this stuff doesn't make sense. And you're like, well, what about the dinosaurs and the billions of years? Guys, there's answers for all of that. All of it, right? There was a massive flood, which is historically proven, currently proven based on things we're finding in mountains, and every religion talks about it. And when that happened, right, ozone layer is different. The earth is different. And so a lot of these larger creatures can't survive. Some of them, guys, there's answers for everything. There's literally answers for everything. Like, If you want the answer, you can find it. You just have to be willing to be curious. Do the research. Figure it out. But at the end of the day, there's more than enough proof. And in fact, God says that creation alone is proof.
Yeah.
Like, just look at what God has created and how it operates. I mean, if you really understand the complexity of your body, to think that that developed over hundreds of millions of years, no, there is a divine creator who created this very, very intricate, complex being and process. And that's how we're here.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank, that's how we're here. And it makes sense. Order does never come from chaos or disorder. We come from a creator.
Yeah. There's always answers for questions in the Old Testament, New Testament, but with regards to the most important event, not only in the Bible, but in all of human history, the gospel account of Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus, it's an important one that you need to know. And I mean, when people throw out these theories like the hallucination theory, it just takes thinking through, like every Christian should be able to reason through this.
Yeah.
And be able to have a reasonable defense for that. But yeah, there's not only that, there's the fine-tuning argument like you were talking about. There's the moral argument. So yeah, and like you said, creation alone is proof. Like that's enough to condemn people.
Yeah, and just something to think through. There's this thing called the Pascal's wager. And I never use this as like, this is what should spur on your faith or cause you to believe in God. But, you think about, if Joe Rogan is an atheist or an agnostic, whatever he is, and let's say I'm wrong. Let's say we're wrong about this. Let's say Jesus was just a regular guy and he was not God. He didn't raise from the dead. I lived a really great life and I impacted people in a lot of positive ways. And I had hope. Peace. I didn't struggle with some of these things that the world's struggling with because they've put their identity in the world and the things of this world. Okay, I had a great life and I end up in the dirt and I'm dust, right? But the flip to that is like, let's say you're wrong and I'm right, and Jesus was the Son of God and he did come, and one day he is gonna judge you. It's like, man, there's eternal consequences to that. Yeah. And so just think through, like, man, what do I really believe? Like, do I really believe that there's nothing? Like, is all of this really purposeless? Like, are we here for no reason? Or is there a higher calling? And I always say, man, the biggest evidence, the best, most blatant evidence of God is a changed life. Like, I can tell you right now, I am a different man because God came into my life. You can't refute that. Like, that's irrefutable evidence. I'm a different man. Like, he stepped in, and the man that I was, the one that was living for the world, that was anxious, that was insecure, that was, all of these things, he's gone, man. And like, I am new because Jesus has stepped into my life. So if nothing else, look at my life. I was a wreck, bro. Like, I'd probably be in jail. Who knows where I'd be? And yet I'm experiencing a different life because I'm looking at it through a different viewpoint.
Yeah, the evidence of changed lives is good evidence enough.
Yeah, it is.
Like that. There's something to it.
Yeah, because like, I mean, and I'm one who's even like a lesser example, but I mean, you take people who lifelong addictions broken overnight. Explain that.
Yeah.
Explain that, scientists. You can't.
You can't.
You can't. No, I'm serious. Like, there is like real psychological, biological, like chemical things going on in their brains overnight. I know people who overnight, meth addicts, done. Overnight, alcoholics, done. Haven't touched it 10 plus years. I know those stories. So to try and tell me that, oh, well, no, like there was a higher power, there was a higher calling on their life, and something happened supernaturally.
Yep.
It's the truth of it.
Yeah.
Something happened supernaturally, and God stepped in. When God steps in, man, change happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Truth.
What else, man? Y'all got anything else on this?
I don't know. I have a lot of hope for Joe Rogan. I think he's close.
He's asking questions.
He's asking questions, and you can see his viewpoints alter over time and get a little more warmed up to Christianity. Yeah. Joe Rogan, I challenge you. I know you're watching this. I challenge you to have someone on your podcast that really knows what they're talking about Christianity,
Bring us on.
and that won't let you slide by with these
The guy who debated Bill
conspiracy
Nye.
theories.
Whatever that guy's name was. The guy
Well,
who debated Bill
yeah,
Nye.
he's all right.
Who is it?
Ken Ham.
Oh, yeah, Ken Ham. I don't actually watch Ken Ham.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ken
Get
Ham.
William Lane Craig on your podcast.
Yeah. Do it. Do we have any hate comments we should look at?
We'll switch to a segment. We'll go to some hate comments.
Show me the hate.
Next segment. All right, let's go to our TikTok. Follow if you are not following
How much
TikTok.
TikTok followers we got?
We are at switching accounts. I'm switching accounts.
Mitch has 5 billion.
Couldn't
Tens.
switch accounts. Right, perfect timing. I know. I know. 54.
54. Dude, we're freaking famous.
54 followers, but
That's more followers than Jesus had. He had 12 disciples.
that's true.
Wow.
We're about to
When you
move
look at it that
mountains. We're about to
What's-
move mountains.
What's that line by Dax? Jesus had 12 disciples. I
I don't know that song.
What? That song's
I
crazy.
think you listen to more Dax than me.
It's Dax. I don't really listen to Dax, but he's got a couple good
Well,
songs.
we only have 54 followers, growing steadily, but we have 10x the hate comments.
It says something like, why you care about your followers, Jesus had 12 disciples.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what it says.
We also have been getting a lot of support, mind you. A lot of
Okay,
good
that's good.
comments.
The hate's just more fun to address. We do get a lot of love. Like, we get a lot of good comments and in-person love, but the hate is way more fun to address. But keep the love. Keep the love. We got to have a little bit of love. You know what I'm saying? Fill that jar as well.
All right, you know what's kind of bothering me?
What?
We had an episode where we were talking, it was covering a Joe Rogan episode, and he was talking, I think it was the Dr. Phil one. He was talking about like the problem with a secular society,
Oh,
and that
yeah,
people
yeah.
will subscribe to their own ideology.
Yeah.
They'll find something to,
Right.
and it's a clip of you saying that, you know, people subscribe to becoming their own God, and you say, you know, if everyone followed God, you know, there'd be no murder, there'd be no stealing, there'd be no cheating.
Right.
Like there's like, it's a noble and amazing pursuit to follow God, because if
Yeah.
everyone did, society would be fixed.
Morale-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, morale.
And in the context of the discussion, you were saying if everyone followed God perfectly.
Yeah,
Like-
correct.
Because no one seems to get that in the comment section.
What are they saying?
They're always, there's like, you know, LMFAO, do you genuinely believe people that follow God don't cheat, lie, and steal?
Gosh, bunch of idiots. What is wrong with
Gosh.
you? You think, I mean, how mentally degenerate do you have to be? Obviously, I am flawed, but I'm saying if everyone perfectly abided by the laws that Jesus has set out for us to abide by, the world would just be, it'd be perfect. Like, no one would lie, no one would cheat, no one would steal. And my
Yeah.
point was, if we're aspiring towards that, that'd be an amazing world compared to what we're living in.
Yeah.
Versus aspiring towards being woke and, you know, judging, living our lives, making decisions based off crystals and the stars aligning. I
Let
mean,
him cook.
gosh,
That's very true.
bunch of absolute goons. Like, dude, if you do crystals, I should just stop.
There are people listening to this that are offended right now, Eli.
I don't care. I literally do not care. I do not care, man.
And this one person says, I don't know. Every murderer, rapist, we're censoring that, and gang member I've met is a born again Christian. So
Who are you hanging out with, my guy?
And here's what I'll say. Fun fact, no, they're not.
yeah, there you
Because
go.
if they were a born again Christian, they wouldn't be murdering people.
Yeah.
Most likely. Now, hey, look, I'm not God, and at the end of the day, some of the heroes in the Bible did do some crazy things. Okay?
Pre-God. And
Yeah. But what I'm saying is your fruit in your life should reflect the faith that you have.
yeah.
And so I don't go around lying, stealing, cheating on my wife, watching pornography. Like, I don't do those things because I have Christ in my life and he has made me a new creation. And I'm now in pursuit of holiness because I have a holy God.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Is that registering?
I don't think so.
Can you connect?
This
You
might be a
catching
good
my
one.
drift?
This
What?
one might be a good one to address.
Okay.
This guy on the same clip says, remember, if you follow a religion, those rules and customs apply to you, not the rest of the population. People don't need religion to not murder or steal.
Okay. I see what he's saying. So he's basically saying, like, you can follow those rules and they can apply to you, but I don't need those in order to be a good person. Wrong. Because here's why. Without religion, what's the baseline of morality? Okay. And so you go, we've talked about this before, guys. It's really common sense. Okay. So let's say, for example, gosh, I'm not sure, I need to be careful where I go with this, but let's say, this is a great example. Okay. Let's say I think it's okay for you to kiss my wife.
Wow.
Great example.
Right. Fantastic example. Right. And I'm like, no, that's totally fine. I don't care. Right. Your wife, obviously, as she should, be like, no can do. No, sir. Right. All of a sudden, now there's conflicting beliefs in regards to morality. Well, who's right? I'm married to her and I'm saying it's okay. She's married to you. She's saying it's not okay. So who's in the right? Who gets the final say on what's right or what's wrong? Well, if there is no baseline of morality, if there is no guideline, field guide for us saying don't lie, don't murder, don't steal, people bend the rules. And so when God says do not lust after, somebody you're not married to, when he says put to death the things of your earthly nature, flee from sexual immorality, he gives us these borders, these guidelines, these rules, if you will, and we abide by those, and that's how we know how to live our life in a way that honors God. And if we didn't have those, I promise you, I would be bending those rules. I'd be like, if there is no baseline, it's like, well, I mean, I might as well steal from my company. I think it's fine. I want more money. My company has enough, right? My company probably is going to think that's wrong. I don't. Can't tell me what I think's right. So you go down a long rabbit trail where that logic does not work. You need one singular guideline, idea of morality where people are able to come together and agree, yeah, this is what we are supposed to be doing. This is what we're not supposed to be doing. And now we can all move forward in the same direction, and we're not going to have conflicting beliefs on morality and where we stand because we have somebody else establishing that jurisdiction for us. It's common sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I like it.
And I guess when he says, remember that if you follow a religion, those rules and customs apply to you, not the rest of the population.
I don't expect you to follow them.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, you are.
That's correct,
what's his name?
Soupy Salt.
Soupy Salt. You're right. And guess what? I don't expect you to follow them. If you are not a believer, I don't expect you to follow them.
Yeah.
But 1 Corinthians 5, if you are a believer, I do expect you to follow them. And I'm going to judge you if you don't. And I'm going to, correct you. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a misconception out there that like people who are believers and Christians like want everybody to act. It's like, no, I'm just going to tell you about Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to tell you about the Jesus that came into my life and saved me from my sin. That's what I'm going to tell you about. I'm not going to tell you to stop drinking. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, I care if you know Jesus because Jesus will take care of the rest.
Yeah. And the way I think of it, the second part, people don't need religion to not murder or steal, do bad things, basically. I think that people don't need religion to not murder or steal.
Do you believe that though? It's like the purge. It's like we kind of do need laws.
So I don't think, there's plenty of atheists out there that are not in an internal sense good people, but like they're just generally good people. They do good things.
You've met them? Not just playing.
Oh wow! There's plenty of good people that aren't Christian.
Sure, there are. Right? Yes.
So no, you don't need to be a Christian to be a good person. But what you are doing when you do good things is acting upon a moral system that is a spiritual and is a spiritual reality that's set in place by God.
Yeah.
It's like a predetermined moral scaffolding
written on your heart. Yeah.
That is written on everyone's heart, whether you believe that or not.
Yeah.
you're acting in accordance with God's law, even though you don't subscribe to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, why don't you murder people?
Yeah.
Because it's wrong. How do you know it's wrong? Well, it just is. Of course.
Yeah.
Because God said it was.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like, murdering people could be completely acceptable. I mean, if you really think about it, we could have a society where it's like, you did something to me, I just go murder you.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
there are
okay.
societies like child sacrifices.
Yeah, for sure.
All that kind of stuff.
For sure. So, like, you got to realize, like, this stuff has existed in the past and sometimes does exist. So, no, there is a standard for morality, and it does come from our Creator who created us, wrote it on our hearts.
Yeah.
And that's why you do subscribe to those things, because there's something in you that tells you, wait, I probably shouldn't lie. I probably shouldn't steal this.
To put it in simplistic terms, you can do good things. You can be a moral person without God, but you can't justify that morality without God.